All right. Namaste, everyone. Thank you all for joining our second and final webinar, part of Northeast Hindu Yuva's The Global Hindu Series. My name is Isha Patel, and I am a junior at Stony Brook University, and I'm working on starting a Hindu Yuva chapter on campus. Hindu Yuva is a student-run, nonprofit, socio-cultural organization with a presence in over 35 universities and cities in the United States. Our aim is to practice, promote, and preserve our Hindu identity while growing up in the United States. Throughout today's event, viewers watching live on YouTube and Facebook are welcome to comment any questions they have about the topic, and we will be choosing unique questions for a moderator to ask our speakers. Also, just a disclaimer, Hindu Yuva does not condone any sort of political discussion, so tonight's discussion will not be reflective of the speakers or Hindu Yuva's political views. So without further ado, our topic for tonight is Those Who Chose, in which we will be discussing with our speakers on subjects related to their personal experience as a first-generation Hindu or non-hereditary Hindu. We will have Hindus who follow the Hindu principles of Advaita, meditation, Bhakti Yoga, Seva as a part of this panel. This will be moderated by Shivain. Shivain was born and raised in Houston, Texas. He went to college at University of Texas at Austin and graduated in 2019 with a degree in mechanical engineering. He is currently working as a plant engineer at a chemical plant in Martinsburg, West Virginia, supporting production of sanitization and cleaning equipment. His current company is Ecolab, and he has been involved with Hindu Yuva since 2014. Shivain?
Thank you, Isha, and thank you everybody for joining. A special thanks to the panelists for joining today, taking time out of your day to let us ask you questions and have a good discussion with you. So just before we get started with the questions, I wanted to go and introduce all the panelists we have today. So Isha, would you be able to show the PowerPoint? So our first panelist, RamBhakt. He is a graduate of UC Berkeley, and he studied molecular biology and music. He began practicing and studying yoga and Ayurveda seriously at the age of 27. He is a yoga teacher and is the founder of the Long Beach School of Yoga. And he's a recent author. He published his first book, A Seeker's Guide to the Yoga Sutras, Modern Reflections on the Ancient Journey. The next speaker that we have, or panelist that we have, is Tiffany Cooper. Tiffany is an energy worker and also a yoga instructor in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. She lives a life of deep spiritual connection. As a Krishna Bhakt, she has a strong sadhana of chanting and studying sacred texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Puran, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. She is a Usui Reiki master and a Four Winds trained shaman who has received all of the Maneki healing rites. She's an herbalist, and she helps others find balance and lead healthier lives. Her classes are filled with a deep sense of joy, reverence, and love that create an atmosphere of personal strength and self-discovery. With an eye towards simple living and high thinking, she encourages students to focus on what is important, to listen to their bodies. Our next speaker is Adriana Salazar. Adriana currently works as an agent of regenerative development in a global network. She holds degrees in tourism and hotel management, yoga, and Ayurveda medicine. Her career in hotel management flourished in the sacred Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, Colombia. In the last 4 years, she has been actively collaborating in strengthening of indigenous peoples' traditions in South America and India. She has collaborated with Sewa International and International Center for Cultural Studies. As intercultural facilitator and event coordinator, she has worked for various indigenous elders, gatherings, yoga events, and academic talks at different universities. Our final panelist is Keshav Fulbrook. Keshav is a soon-to-be political science graduate from the University of Montana. He's currently 28 years old, and he started pursuing the Sanatana Dharma at the age of 19. So he began his studies through a Tamil Shaiva Siddhanta parampara and is currently affiliated with Arshavidya Gurukulam and Swami Dayanand's diaspora of teachers of Advaita Vedanta. At the age of 23, he was given the name Keshav in a Namakaran Sanskar conducted in the temple in his hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada. 3 years later, he took his Upanayanam at the Swami Dayanand Ashram in Rishikesh. He avidly pursues Karmakanda study in Vedic and Kerala Tantra traditions, along with Sri Vidya Upasana, in addition to Vedanta. So that's the introduction of our panelists that we have today. And we can get started with the general questions that we have prepared. So before I start asking the questions, I'll just have an order of who can answer so that it's kind of smooth flowing. So we'll start off with RamBhakt ji, then Tiffany ji, Adriana ji, and Keshav ji. Got it? Cool. So the first question that I am dying to know, and I'm sure all of our viewers also want to know, is how did you find your path to Hinduism? And what triggered you to learn more and more and become more invested in the faith? So RamBhakt, you can get started.
Thank you. Namaste. Thanks for inviting me. Let's see. My mother introduced me to yoga when I was 15 years old. I walked into her room and she was practicing asanas out of a book. And she, even after we did some of the poses, she asked me to sit and close my eyes. And I even had a meditation experience, in my first try at yoga with her. That was very deep and profound for me. I felt time had changed and it was very profound, but I actually didn't keep up with it. But later on, because of some back pain, my mother suggested I go take some yoga classes at a yoga studio later on, when I was like 25 years old. And after about 2 years of self-dedicated practice, I really enjoyed the physical practice. I decided to do a teacher training. And in this teacher training, we used Swami Satchidananda's Yoga Sutras translation. On the back of this Yoga Sutras, I found Swami Satchidananda. I looked up his ashram and I went to Yogaville. I studied, I did a 1-month immersion program. And after the end of this 1 month, David Frawley came to Yogaville. David Frawley, if you don't know, he's a Vedic scholar and, Ayurveda, yoga, Jyotish, everything. He's written 50 books or so. And I took this training. It was Ayurveda and yoga for yoga teachers. And at a certain time in this class, he said that for some psychological conditions like schizophrenia, we might prescribe a mantra to Ganesh. And for me, that was sort of, because I had a scientific background, I was really interested in finding out what is the mechanism, why Ganesh, why this deity, why this mantra, how would that work for this specific, psychological condition, schizophrenia. So basically that kind of triggered my curiosity to find out how this elephant works. How is it that there's these subtle principles in, yoga and Ayurveda and, in this Hindu Sanatana Dharma tradition that has these profound healing effects. And essentially that's, I ended up going to India and, I lived in this village and met my friend Ritesh, and I sort of got really immersed in the culture and started to learn more and more about how to apply it in my own life and how to research more in the field.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. Tiffany ji?
Yes. So, it's kind of a long story. I think I'll shorten it though. It's just always been important for me to live a life of purpose. Since I was a child, I always wanted to, make sure that I was living in a conscientious way. And so I've always been very, very spiritual, but I could never find a religious path that truly connected with my heart. And so as I was training for yoga to become a yoga instructor, I read about Bhakti yoga. And everything I read, it would always say, you know, Bhakti yoga is the path of spiritual devotion and love. And every time I would read that, I would think, okay, these are my people, you know, that's my life, devotion, spiritual devotion and love. So this is for me. And, you know, as devotees of Krishna know, as those of us who practice the Vaishnava path, if you have a sincere desire to connect with God or to find God, you know, he always makes a way for you. So he makes all those arrangements. And so that's how I came to it.
Cool. Adriana ji?
Well, for me, the best way I can answer that question, I guess it was a real pure serendipity in my case, because the place where I was living at that time, you know, it was not something very popular, yoga or anything like that. But I guess it's just life. I was going through a difficult time, and then I found a space, a place, and the tradition that they were practicing in that place was the Kundalini yoga, and that was for me the kind of the entrance for like to go into that world. And then like that was a long path there. I started experiencing and practicing, and I guess for me, to have the discipline to go deeper and deeper, I took this training course just for the fact that I needed to get some discipline for myself. And then I guess what really pushed me to go farther and farther was the what I was finding out in every session and every practice. I was kind of understanding and feeling like many things that I was realizing that there was something very interesting that I was finding there. And I ended up going and practicing like different traditions, just kind of like with the sake of discovering more and more. And that took me to India as well. And but it's been a pure serendipity. That's the best way I can say.
Nice. Keshav ji?
Yeah, when I was growing up, so I lived with a lot of different members of my family at different times. And my family is fairly religiously diverse, but generally all kind of within the umbrella of Christianity, some being Catholic, some being Mormon, some being evangelical, father formerly Buddhist as well. And so I had a taste of different paths, but within the general umbrella of Christianity through my formative years. And then by the time I was about 13, I started getting interested in searching a little bit further as well, independently. And through some of the books that I read and some of the teachings that I was exposed to between the ages of then and 15, I noticed that consistently a lot of the authors that had something very impactful to say would quote things from Hindu Shastras. So they would quote the Upanishads, Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita. And so I could tell from that time that there was something very worth pursuing, something that I needed to pursue within this tradition. But even still, that probably wouldn't come to be as, I didn't realize how significant it would become later. So then by the time I was about 18, I'd met a good friend of mine, Anupam, who's giving Bhagavad Gita lessons in the town that I'm in now, Missoula, Montana. Attended them all the way through the end. And, you know, the way that the teachings were presented, the systematic way in which they were presented, that was a marriage of many of the ideas that I was exposed to before, but took me deeper into an understanding of them, kind of shaped the path that I'm on today.
So that leads me to, I guess, sort of a follow-up. I believe reading through your biographies, I saw that each of you have sort of chose a profession that's somewhat directly related to Hinduism. Why was that? Why was a profession related like that? RamBhakt?
You know, I'm not sure that I would identify my work as, Hindu, teaching per se. My own study is, I teach my students about Hinduism in the yoga teacher training, because I think they should know where the roots of yoga are, and the broader philosophy and how Hindu, I guess, principles. I mean, if you can describe Hatha yoga as a Hindu thing, then yes, I guess I'm teaching Hinduism, but the broader principles of dharmic life I do teach. So I guess, yes, I'm teaching Hinduism, Hindu work. I only decided to become a teacher. I was doing a Kriya Yoga course in Sweden, and there were only 3 Americans that were in this course with us. And I remember we were sitting in one of the lobbies, and I was talking about the history of yoga with some of the other people there. And there was another guy who was about my age, who went all the way to India, went all the way to Sweden to study this. And so I considered him my peer, and he just said to me, I would study with you. And up to that point, I never really thought about teaching. I just was practicing, and I was following my own path and doing my own practice. And so I think that just put the seed in my mind that maybe I could, that people are recognizing I had something to share. And that's probably what put the seed in my mind to actually start a school. And the other thing is, I heard my father was losing sleep over my lifestyle. So I told him, okay, I'll come back to America, and I'll start a yoga school. I'll start a business to show you that I can make a living doing what I do. So that's kind of how I am.
Yeah, a little bit more of a straightforward thing than that end with your parents or with your father, I guess. Cool.
So if it weren't for my father, and if it weren't for this young guy, this other person who's in the course with me, I probably might have still been, I'd probably be in India right now trying to learn Sanskrit and learning more and more Ayurveda. But I ended up deciding to, start to make a living because I needed to.
Right. Adriana?
Yeah, well, I guess at the moment when I incorporate the values of what the yoga practice and everything that was given to my life, my duties and my work started to redirect in a way that I understood the best that I could do for myself and the world is it was doing something for the universal well-being. And that involves the many, like the forms and the shapes. This doesn't really matter for me at the moment. Like it doesn't. It's just that's what creativity is so important, because you can do that work in whatever way, and it's very diverse. And when you work with indigenous peoples, and when you belong to a territory like this one, like South America, then you can see how like fun this work is to work with that mindset and that flow. And so my life then incorporates certain values that are, of course, in the roots of the Hinduism, as well as the roots of many other traditions. And so that when I see them that way, I kind of like names and disappear. It's just the same kind of purpose that we are all sharing. And so it's actually very nice to see when you're in that path, to see how many others are in the same and doing the same, and how much we can support each other from different perspectives. So I guess the the path that I'm experiencing the most is the Sewa, because then I guess it's what it helps me to be strong with the real purpose. It's not any, yeah. So for me, the Sewa is the best. That has been working for me so far very well. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I messed up the order, I guess. It was supposed to be Tiffany second, but Tiffany.
Yeah, so for me, the reason for me, as I grew older, it really became important to kind of put my life on a single continuum. I didn't want to compartmentalize anymore and think, this is my home life and this is my work life and this is my spiritual life and this is my social life. I really wanted, everything to be kind of on the same track so that I could really be my genuine self and really live my truth in every way possible. And so it also made my life much easier, just to have everything be one giant bag of, my life and the beauty of it and my spirituality. Because my spirituality is of the utmost importance to me. So for me, teaching yoga allows me to express not just my spirituality, but all of my life. And, it's also my work and it's also my social life. And it's also my, it's everything together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Keshav?
Mhm. So my studies are wrapping up, so the full the career trajectory hasn't started yet, but I do very much hope that and both hope and plan to be able to tie my dharmic interests in with my career. And I think that, no matter what one's career is, of course, their worldview is able to tie into it. That's essentially what karma yoga ends up being, is that you're able to bring that attitude and perspective into any work that you do. But in particular, I think that there's something much to be said about things that we often consider intangible. So things like meaning, purpose, things that oftentimes when people are pressured or they're trying to listen to people into what career should I ultimately decide, those things end up not getting pushed into the background as far as what should be considered. But interestingly, they're also some of the things that end up being most impactful for not only individuals, but like society at large. So I think that an opportunity for that would be good if possible.
Okay. So, I think, Adriana, you touched base on this when you were speaking earlier. There's not really one correct way to practice the faith. It reaches into many realms. It's very diverse. It's very broad. What is it for you and the general group? Like, what aspect of the faith stands out to you the most? Any principles that you resonate with, or what piece of text do you identify with the best? Is it the Gita, the Upanishads? If you could just speak to that a little bit more, RamBhakt, starting with you.
Okay, you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
Wait, repeat the first part again.
So what aspect of the faith stands out to you the most?
Okay. Well, for me, yoga is a practice, so the experiences and the knowledge, what's it called when you process life, through the practice, through study, through reflection, through consistent discipline. We say tapas, svadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana, right? Surrender, and really how it brings me to balance, and how it helps me to conceptualize the elements in my life, my karma, my actions, the reactions that I experience, my interpersonal relationships. So for me, practice is, this type of practice is something where you really own your perception and you say, okay, all of this is happening to me for a reason. I'm here to understand and to grow, and there's this karma that I'm bringing into the world, right? So there's nothing more intimate to me than the spiritual wisdom, to understand, yes, I'm going through this karma, but actually there's a spirit that's within me that's unchanging. So the ability to connect to that and to develop a strong identity with a non-localized consciousness, or a non-localized higher self, is something that I employ in my daily life. It's a way of developing a double awareness, a dual consciousness, one of the prakriti and nature and what's happening in karma, but then also having this higher self as the real self, as my true identity. So through study and through practice, we strengthen that higher perception and stepping out of the ignorance of the ego. Mm-hmm. So that's been something that's constantly working for me, and is the process that I'm currently always going through, I believe. Right. As far as textbooks that resonate with me, I feel like any text you can choose at any time, to give you what you need at a specific time in your life. So when I was writing this Yoga Sutras, so I spent the last year doing a lot of research. Well, it was actually 4 or 5 months of last year. I spent a lot of time digging into the Yoga Sutras, and it was the first book that I was really introduced to. So I had a very good, I had some confidence in doing the writing the book that I did. But I wouldn't say that it's the kind of book that really gives me, if I had to turn to a text, I would probably choose Yoga Vasishtha as my primary, a text that I believe I would take with me on a desert island. So I really like the Yoga Vasishtha, and of course the Gita has everything in it as well. So I'd say those 3 books, the Yoga Vasishtha, Gita, and the Yoga Sutras, are the closest to me. But I read texts about Samkhya philosophy and Hatha Yoga. So all of this is part of, in my world, my one spiritual tradition. And, so I'm not really stuck on any particular textbooks or use anyone in exclusion of others.
Yeah, I guess it's tough to pinpoint one particular thing. I mean, it's so broad, again, like I said. So Tiffany G, I said, or reading in your bio, it said you are, you read the Gita a lot. You're a big proponent, or not a proponent, you're a big follower of that. That's like one of your texts. So I guess if there's a transition to you to answer the question of, is there anything in the Gita that stands out to you the most? Like what's the thing that you really resonate with in there?
Yes, well, for me, the Gita is a guide for life. It guides us in every way, in every possible situation in our lives. You can just pick up the Bhagavad Gita and you'll find the answers that you need. They're right there. It takes place on a battlefield, and for, even though we're not, physically warriors on a battlefield, the material world is a battlefield, and we're spirit souls living these lives and, battling Maya and all of these things that take us away from who we truly are. So getting back to what you said at the beginning, though, about what calls or speaks to us most about our practice, for me, it is the deeply experiential nature of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It is incredible. It's a very mystical process, and we actually, when you practice, you actually experience God. It's not sentimentality, it's not belief, it's not fanaticism, it's a real actual experience. And also experiencing that reciprocal relationship with him as well. So for me, that's the greatest thing about the practice, or that calls to me most. And also as far as principles go, Sanatan Dharma, that the soul actually has an eternal purpose that transcends material boundaries. That's the essence of it to me, of the whole practice, is really getting in and finding out, why am I here? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? And how can I, achieve or live in a way that works toward that purpose? So yeah. Oh, and another text is the Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Bhagavat Purana. For me, Bhagavad Gita, yes, is actually my daily sadhana study. But in addition to that, I also study the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam, is just that incredible text that gives you so much detail about everything in life. And it's kind of the text that, all those questions that we walk around in life having, again, like I said, why am I here? How big is the universe? How small is the soul? All of those questions are answered in that text. And so, so definitely, to be able to have access to things like that is one of the most incredible things about Hinduism. Yeah.
Awesome. Adriana ji?
For me, what really gives me that confidence of this path is every time when I can feel how connected we are with this living community, with this with creating that sense of a living community, and that goes and extends to all the living beings around you. And when you experience that, that's where I feel that the faith started to grow within myself. And that involves many things. For me, the way I understand it, also incorporating the roots where I belong to, is the law of origin, or the cosmic laws, as you can also see it. So when you start living and perceiving all those living beings around you, and how you cooperate with them, and you are in the like experiencing that, and then yeah, it's experimenting all the laws, how day by day are in a perfect equilibrium, or how things really needs to be in order for all of us to be well. All these things are what really, if I can say, that's my faith. That's what I believe. That's what it gives me the reason to continue. And about the book, I'm studying the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. That's something that I think is gonna be with me for the rest of my life. I guess it's gonna take me more time to understand it completely. But there is a book that it really touched me. I guess because it came and arrived in the perfect time and the perfect space and moment, time, everything. And it was the autobiography of a yogi. That's a classical book, I suppose, but it really, really touched me, because and it doesn't, like, for me, it was not that at that time I was already having a sort of a deep practice or anything like that. It was just, I don't know, it was through his words and the way he was describing everything really helped me to feel there was something like bigger, just as simple as that. And I'm very grateful for that book. And that also was kind of the door for me to go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Keshavji, sorry, I was on mute.
No worries. I definitely relate to what everyone on the panel had expressed, and like you said, also it was a broad question, and it was difficult to condense my thoughts. I feel very passionate about it all, but if I had to pick two specific verses from two sources, I would say Bhagavad Gita 4:13, which is the karma niyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. You only have control over your actions, over what you do. You don't have control over the results of those actions. The results of those actions that come back to you are in bigger hands. And being able to kind of approach life with this attitude of, we can only do the best that we can with what we have, the best way that we know how, and let go of the outcome needing to be what we think it needs to look like, and make room for whatever is going to be coming our way, and then do the best we can with that. That has been it's readjusted my attitude to the way that I've approached life, or at least try to. And then the first verse of Ishavasya Upanishad, the see Ishvara everywhere, see Ishvara in everything. Ishavasya idam sarvam, where everything that you look upon is a manifestation of the divine, and to try and bring that recognition into day-to-day life itself as a sadhana.
So one other, I guess, final general question that I had was, what challenges did you have when you first started practicing? Any internal, external, anything within, any challenges from the community outside of Hinduism, within the Hindu community, family, any conflicting priorities? A fun one, I guess, that we came up with was, I know all of you have gone to India. Language must have been a barrier. That's an example. How did you overcome that? If you could kind of touch base upon that, starting with RamBhakt.
In India, I didn't really have much difficulty, to tell you the truth. Most people that I ran into could speak English, even in the village where I stayed, or I had. My friend Ritesh, he would actually translate. I was actually initiated by a sadhu in India who spoke no English, and so he really gave me only 5 instructions that were translated through Ritesh. So the language is never a problem for me. Difficulties, well, it's difficult to, the yoga practice for me itself, they talk about the dark night of the soul, and I keep talking about how old I am. When I was 20, 27, 28, 29, they talk about this transition, and thankfully, or I don't know, in some auspicious way, I was in India during that time, and I was living in an ashram, and there were Westerners who were actually talking to me about how, I'm going through this transition right now, and so, through lots of meditation practice, I would probably say that just the crumbling of my ego was the most difficult thing, just that realizing certain things that I've been attached to were not going to give me happiness. The psychological process of letting go of attachment to various people and things, that was the most difficult thing. I wouldn't say, I was very blessed to be supported by my family, during my studies. So I think for a lot of people, financial issues make it difficult for them to balance spiritual life and their corporeal existence. So I've just been mostly studying and then eventually feeling the call to share.
Awesome. Tiffany?
For me, I haven't really experienced, actually the only challenge I experienced when I first came to Bhakti is just not having enough hours in the day to practice and study, as much as I wanted to. That so slowly but surely shifted, and somehow, there was some amazing way made for me to be able to do that. And with the Hindu community, I have always felt very embraced. I never felt any challenges. I never felt, and I never felt any external challenges with that. I did have moments of thinking of things like cultural appropriation and things like that, but ultimately those kind of just went away. As Ram just alluded to, or you just mentioned that. It's like this disillusion of ego. That was my experience in India. Was every day I would wake up and think there's no ego here. And so it was very easy to communicate because there was a heart connection with everyone that I met, everyone that I spoke to. Even if we didn't speak the same language, we could always reach out to one another through our hearts. It was really, that's the way. And also I belong to an international society where, almost everything we do is translated into various languages. So, and the books that we study were written by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And he very graciously and very generously, when he translated all of his books, he, gave word for word definitions of all of the Sanskrit. So yeah, so it was, it's been an easy transition, not a lot of challenges.
That's good to hear. Adriana ji?
For me, I think it was just the root for the traditional or conservative or this romantic Latin American style of life. That means they needed to really change certain habits that was kind of going against the culture all around me. And I think that was the most difficult part at the beginning. As I was really trying to grow and be strong in this path, but nothing around really kind of supports you. And what it's just that classical thought that we have to re-educate ourselves, or kind of forget everything that we know and kind of start learning from the very beginning. So that process of kind of seeing my family and kind of putting them in another position and kind of open my mind to start learning these new things. That process, that internal process that really deserves a lot of conviction, like a really strong sense of which, I guess. And yeah, and about the language, yeah, I guess once you understand the codes, because there are always codes in all languages, so you understand certain codes, the social codes and keywords, and there's certain things in India, the body languages, all these things are then you start understanding in between lines. And I think that's the best when you're in this path, because not everything is being said with words. There's many other things that really it has been transmitted in and it doesn't involve the language itself. So I guess if you don't understand the language when you are learning those things, it's quite useful, because normally the language kind of narrow our ways of learning or understanding the message. So many things comes in silence, I suppose.
Yeah, very well said. Keshav ji, I'll start with you, and then afterwards we'll start going to person-specific questions.
Great. As far as, like many have said, I also have found the Hindu community as a whole incredibly hospitable, and have been very embraced by almost everyone that I had met who'd been involved with me, or the things that I'm able to participate in, like this, like what we're doing today. I mean, it's been fantastic. So any obstacles that I thought were going to be there mostly were in my head. I'd heard stories about people who might look foreign not being allowed into temples, understanding that that might happen. But, any temple that I had gone to that, it was reported where that happened, after simple explanation of, I'm Hindu and this is why I'm here. And it's generally always met with understanding and enthusiasm. Yeah, most of it turned out to not be as big of a deal as I thought that it was going to be. And then on the language point in particular, obsessed with language. So I did 4 years in Hindi, and then one of them was in Jaipur, and then working on Tamil now. And one of the reasons I'm just, and so it's not, it isn't necessary per se. I feel like there's a lot that can be gotten out of it, and it's something that I enjoy doing, just because while those connections can be there with people in the areas that I've been to without background in language, I felt like it was able to occur on a deeper level even with it. But like many have mentioned, I mean, India's the second most English speaking country on earth, and it'll get you north, south, east, and west. It'll get you almost anywhere. But yeah, I love language just for its own sake. So
Cool. All right. So now we'll transition into the person-specific question or panelist-specific question. Again, I kind of hinted this earlier. The time is also we're trying to manage that. So I've got a bunch of questions for each of you, but I'll go one at a time because we're also getting a lot of audience questions as well. So we'll start off with you, RamBhakt ji. You mentioned so I believe you said that you wrote a book, and it was also listed in your biography that I said earlier. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, A Seeker's Guide to Yoga Sutras? What exactly are you conveying or writing about in the book?
Well, first of all, I would never have personally thought that I could have done a translation and commentary on the Yoga Sutras ever. In my teacher training course, I used to, I taught the Yoga Sutras in 4 sessions, and I made these lectures available to the public. So probably if you do a Google search or Google image search, you might see a flyer for one of my Yoga Sutras classes. And I think someone, a publishing company came to me and they said, we want to write this book on the Yoga Sutras. Do you think you can do this? And I said, well, I don't know, book 4 and book 3, it's like really intense. I don't know if I'm really up to this. And so we ended up going back and forth, and I kind of told them, I don't know if I can really handle this particular sutra, or, some things are redundant. Maybe we should truncate it. So not only was I bold enough to try and translate it, but I also ended up omitting a couple of sutras, and I sort of picked and chose specific sutras that I thought were the most effective for for modern seekers, and the ones that were most impactful for me and that I could elaborate the best on. So essentially, the Yoga Sutras has 4 chapters to it, and each chapter has, describes different dimensions of working with the mind and the body and the soul. The first book is, I describe them as The first book is about understanding the mind. The second book is about practice. The third book is about attainments. And the fourth book is about liberation. So that's what I did. I tackled, the Yoga Sutras contains, different short sutras. They're short aphorisms and sayings in Sanskrit, so they need to be translated by someone. Because Sanskrit is such a rich language, many words have different meanings. So someone, and it's expected that a modern practitioner or a teacher needs to translate these sutras in every generation so that they can be more applicable to the modern use, in fact. At least that's my understanding, So I went ahead and translated the sutras to the best of my ability. I used various sources to find a way to translate them in a useful tone, because sometimes even other modern translations, they get a little esoteric, and sometimes it's hard to understand what they're even trying to say. So I was asked to do a reinterpretation of the Yoga Sutras for the modern, they described it in layman's terms. So I took one sutra, and then I was to write maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs on it. So 100, I think it was 100 or 200 words was the length of my commentary. And so it's a digestible version of the Yoga Sutras, and something that can kind of be more accessible to the common man and to modern Western practitioners.
Awesome. Cool. So I got another question, actually. I was supposed to only ask one, but I'm going to ask 2 for you. We have to ask how exactly did you come with the name RamBhakt? How did that come about?
I didn't give myself the name RamBhakt. My friend Ritesh did. Okay. So yeah. So again, I was on a tour in India, and we ended up in Khajuraho, this village, where I met this boy Ritesh. He was on a motorcycle, and he just he took me away from the group, and he said, "Tell me, why did you come to India?" And I said, I came to learn some more yoga and understand something about Tantra and to find out how this elephant works. And so he said, "Oh, Hari, you should stay here. There's many yogis, Tantra, Mantra, Yantra, everyone's Hindu. So if you stay here, you can stay with my family." And I was like, wow, this is probably what I was actually looking for. And so I stayed with him, and then he introduced me to their family guru, who's a sadhu who's staying in this temple, and I would go and just watch him, and he would chant, and he would do puja, and I was just sitting there watching my mind still going and judging and jumping in the past and the future, and I was realizing I'm supposed to be opening my heart. So that was my practice, was to sit there and to find out what it is that I was to learn from this gentleman. Eventually, he gave me a mantra, and he gave me a name. He named me Jambant. Do you know who Jambant is? From the Ramayana. Yep. So yeah, and Ritesh said, no, your name is RamBhakt, which is, I guess, more of a general term for anyone who's a devotee of Ram. And that's how I got the name RamBhakt.
Okay, cool, awesome. All right, so Tiffany G, got a question for you. So I believe you're a mother of 3 children?
Yes, yeah.
So what, in your opinion, is the best way to transform, I guess, the dense philosophies of Hinduism to children? I guess what's the easiest way to get a child interested in the culture and the practices?
Yeah, I think that the best way, as anything in life, as a parent, you can't really force your children to do anything, or really to believe in anything, or to have faith in anything. We can't force them, so I think for me, the best way is to expose them to it, let them see their parent, let the child see the parent practice and see the benefits of it, and be a good example, you know, just be a good example of all of the beautiful values that Hinduism teaches. And, you know, once they start to see that there are benefits from the practice, then they'll want to understand more. You know, it's kind of like anything else in life, you know, that we expose our children to. If they see that there's a positive result from it, or there's this little something there. And again, with Hinduism, it's so very deep that once you really start to learn a little bit about it, you start to get sucked in. So again, just exposing them to it and letting them see that there are benefits to it, I think that they naturally become curious and want to understand more about it.
Interesting. Awesome. So Adriana ji, your turn. A question I got for you is, so you've worked a lot with indigenous cultures, indigenous communities. Is there any sort of relationship you see with their cultures and the Indian culture? Anything in their beliefs and traditions, any correlation that you see?
Yeah, I guess when we go to the fundamental or the profound expressions of each culture in general, they all connect with the same truth, and it's all related to the preservation of life. So I guess what it is different is the way how it manifests in each culture. How do you download that connection to the greatest spirit, or the greatest spirit, or the mother consciousness? So how do you connect, and how do you download that information, that wisdom? How do you experience that? How do you share that within your community? That's what it brings, like the diversity. And so to answer your question, like the connection between the Hindu culture as any other culture in the world with indigenous traditions, at the end, like in the highest part of the deepest part of those traditions are the same. We all share the same. We all belong to the same mother. And so, yeah, that's.
And so I believe you've also done some work with Sewa International. So how have you seen development in yourself since you've been involved in Sewa and any Sewa work that you're doing?
And I guess the karma service, so experiencing the karma in the work we do is super important. Like having no expectation of the results, that's something that really free us from the action of doing, because we all put in our hearts, you know, this work, and we're giving our best, and we are waving with all these people there with the same purpose. So we protect the action that we are doing at the moment. We are giving it with the most with all our compassion and love and respect and everything. And so we are just going through this path. And so I guess the contribution of Sewa International as an organization, for example, that holds the belief in its roots, is being a very interesting scenario for all of us to practice, because we're all practicing in the work we do. We're practicing, so that's what we do, and we're practicing, and we have a safe scenario to practice and a loving scenario as well to practice and to try. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Keshav ji had a question for you. So I took a look at your bio. I think there's the website that I saw your bio on. And you write that when you initially started learning more about the faith, you felt that not a lot of things described and taught in school or media gave a true description of what Hinduism actually was. So given how dense our scriptures can be, do you think it's possible to accurately describe the Sanatana Dharma in any way in your average high school textbook? And if you would, I mean, what misconceptions would you clarify um, based off of what you have researched and learned thus far?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it's possible to give a topical overview that's good, that's decent, and something like a high school textbook, or something that will give a very general overview. And I know that there's some discussion amongst Hindu organizations in the United States to make sure that that happens and that things are able to be reflected accurately or in a way that brings a better understanding, even if a topical one, at that level. Like you say, though, you know, our scriptures and things go very, very deep, very, very in depth, and that's something that, you know, traditionally was done through that Gurukula, the parampara, you know, a very traditional methodology of learning that, while still in existence, has waned somewhat. But I think that, you know, for what it's worth, the internet has opened up possibilities that were never around before. You know, things like Zoom. There's multiple classes that I'm taking on Zoom, and a lot of my initial introductions to everything that I'm interested in now happened on the internet itself, and I think it is a powerful tool to at least help people get pointed in the right direction of what to pursue.
Can you give a very brief description of what exactly the Karmakand is that you are studying?
Yeah. So Karmakanda is like any of the rituals, sort of like what had got me interested in you know, doing the Shodashupachara pujas and yajnas and all of the steps, like trying to learn the 16 samskaras and things, everything that a pandit traditionally will do, perform in a temple. You know, I've been pursuing, trying to learn that, because I think that ritual, in a sense, is able to communicate things in a way and in a context that even through words sometimes can be difficult. Like it adds one of the things that left an impression on me that even to this day I can't entirely understand, was when I was first stepping onto the path. I attended a puja for Ganesh Chaturthi, and there's something that is conveyed through ritual that's symbolic, but helps contextualize the teaching and present the teaching in a way that you can see it and not only hear it, and not, you know, it engages all 5 of your senses. And so I think that's something that's valuable to learn and practice and all of the above.
Awesome. Cool. Tiffany G, I got to ask you another question. Everybody got 2. I got to ask you another. So we actually got a question from an audience. What is your favorite chant, mantra, or shloka?
Yeah, my favorite. Well, I don't even have to think about this. My favorite mantra is the Maha Mantra. So the Hare Krishna mantra. Yeah.
Awesome.
And was it just, and it was a mantra or chant, or I'm sorry, a mantra or verse, or was it any of those?
Any of them. Any of them.
Yeah. I'm sorry, yes.
Can you say the Maha Mantra real quick so that everybody in the audience knows?
Yes, absolutely. It's Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nice. Thank you very much. Awesome. So I guess I just randomly I went into audience questions too, so we can enter that phase of the webinar. One question that I got was, do you have any ideas for ways to make the Hindu philosophy more accessible to people? Keshavji, I know you also said something about the internet. It's very broad now too. It's very, you can get a lot of information through that. So I mean that I guess that's one way. So I'm kind of answering something. But RamBhakt, if you could get started with that.
Well, I did my level best. I wrote a book,
Yeah.
you know, so, and, you know, for me, I really, the gateway for me was the yoga and, I mean, the Hatha yoga and the Ayurveda, you know, and again, Ayurveda, when I learned that there were these subtle practices in Ayurveda and that there are subtle concepts about our senses and our actions and our diet and our lifestyle, our reactions, you know, the whole idea of karma, you know, is it's very deep and profound. So I'm seeing that people are, I feel like even in general, it's said that the body gets sick, the mind is turbulent. So people will slowly find, the best that we can do is be a good model of showing that the tradition is working, you know, that it's helping us, that it's fulfilling our own inner desires, or it's bringing us knowledge and wisdom. So my only work is to just express my own joy, to express you know, what knowledge I have synthesized the best I can, and otherwise I feel like the tradition, and specifically the yoga practices that people are being exposed to, I mean, they're realizing that there's health benefits, you know, to pranayama, to meditation, you know, to the asana practice. I mean, there's health benefits to puja. I'm sure all of these things are something that can be, you know, felt. So that's kind of the angle that I'm coming with, you know, that people can experience this in their mind, in their body, and as long as there are people who are sharing that this tradition is working for them, then it will thrive and continue to flourish. It's not something that I feel like I need to do anything more than what I have been doing.
Nice. Tiffany G, I guess from here, it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific order if anybody would like to contribute to that one.
I would just like to kind of agree or echo what Ram just said, is that yoga practice, I mean, I'm seeing with yoga teachers and Western yoga teachers that they're becoming much more interested in the spiritual aspect of their practice. You know, you know, it's been a physical, it's been exercise for so long here. And also, you know, the times that we're living in, you know, people are looking for something much deeper, you know, than what they're experiencing. You know, they need something to hold them. They need something that they can turn to in times of distress. Because of, you know, in the world, we're all experiencing greater distress than we all have ever experienced it on a you know, national and international level. So I think that people will naturally begin to look for outlets and to look for something to take them deeper into their souls.
I personally believe that what needs to be accessible and available for people are scenarios where we all can feel the wellness, and that could come through many different ways. Doesn't really necessarily need to be in with a certain tradition. I think in this point of where we are as a humans, we just need those scenarios like open up, and each of us will follow, because of our karma, we follow our path, like any path that will be for us, for each one of us. But I think our responsibility, or at least how I feel it, is to create those scenarios, and also I think that for each place where we are at the moment in the world, like each territory, it also, there is certain tradition, there is certain values, there is certain practices that belongs to that particular place, and I think we need to give the priority to that, because there is a certain reason why it was there, and so we have to incorporate all those things. So I guess this is the moment where it needs to be an equal and an open scenarios for all to practice these values and things that we all feel.
Much.
I remember first starting out, some of the initial things being a little bit difficult, because there's, Sanatana Dharma is this vast ocean of everything, of knowledge, of practice, and there's many different avenues that you can take. And for someone starting out who may not have a strong background in that, to know where to start is often a difficult thing. And I see that a lot reflected in comments online for people trying to figure out where to start. And the most common reply to that is, oh, find a guru. And, so I'm sitting here in Missoula, Montana, and, it's, it's like, so where am I going to find that here? There aren't a whole lot of resources available. And what the solution to that is difficult to say. I feel like in many ways, through, I was able to, if you want to call it getting lucky, or just had the grace to have had opportunities come my way where I could pursue things at a deeper level and figure out how to move forward. But, maybe a lot of people, as they're learning with the intention to become teachers, sort of a thing. And that ties back into that, why would one want one's career ultimately to tie into Dharma in a way? I think that might be an avenue for people, because there's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge that I've met in India and elsewhere, but who are beginning to teach, but it's I think that there's a lot of demand for that even more. So
Awesome. Cool. So the next question that I got for Adriana Ji. What do you think of the idea of coexistence with nature and Hindu culture?
Just with that word of coexistence, in my mind, it takes me to the Amazon rainforest. That's for me the place where I've experienced that coexisting word like the most, like vivid, like strong. And when we are in that state, or when we are in that precious moment of coexisting, like consciously, I think there is no names. There is no, yeah. So coexisting with nature, coexisting with Hinduism, that's the question, like with other traditions, we are just there. So there is a like mother hold us all. You know, there is no one is outside of this. No one is outside of this coexisting experience. We are all there, and because we all and we belong to the same nature, is just there is no difference. So there is no. I think it's because of the way I've been learning in the forest is that when you're there is not really names. Is that we just cooperate each other. We just, you know, we're just there. And so I don't know if that's the best way to answer I'm answering that question, but what I want to say is that that living community that where we are all there is no difference between one or another. Actually, the elder brothers are the ones who arrive first to the territory. Wherever we are, those are our elder brothers. And what if we need to follow something in that coexisting experience is the law, like the law what Mother Earth is teaching us every day, like what is showing us in every single moment. So there's certainly very important and crucial wisdom that has come from different traditions, and Hinduism has something very, very special that I see. The way I see is that a great way to remind us, because we now need to remind like certain things. And as many other traditions, I think why I appreciate it the most, because it has helped me in my personal path, is there is a very clear path, a very, you know, it was well structured and so clear that there is a easy to learn. And so in that coexisting world, of course, we are all there. And it's beautiful to be with all of you, of course.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I guess we're about time to conclude now. So I guess if I can get, you know, concluding remarks from each of you, and I guess one question that I'd like for everybody to kind of shed some light on, or just to give some sort of advice on, is, do you have any advice for Hindus in America that are trying to find their path in the Sanatan Dharma? So if you can kind of give your concluding remarks and kind of tie this in of what your advice is, and your any suggestions you would have. So RamBhakt, we'll start off with you.
Pick up a book, seek a teacher, you know, someone who has something that you would like, you know. And a teacher doesn't have to be somebody who you have to surrender everything to. You can have a teacher that teaches you Bhakti, and another teacher who teaches you Raja Yoga. You know, someone can teach you devotion, someone can teach you concentration meditation, someone else can teach you karma yoga, selflessness. So if you want to get into the tradition, I feel like it's important to find a model, you know, or someone who you can aspire towards, you know. And I think I really want to go back to this this topic of nature. You know, nature is our teacher. Mother Nature is the teacher. So, you know, nature is healing. It's probably the source of pure prana. You know, when you're out in nature, you can feel life force energy at its highest. When you see something that is infinite, like a sunset, or you see a vast horizon, or even if you look down at sand, you get an idea of how infinite the world is, or what you get a taste of what infinity might be like. So there's this idea that if you really like Dattatreya was one of the main gurus, and he was only taught by nature, and he learned from dogs and cats and from being out in nature. So there is some spontaneous learning that really happens when you put yourself in nature, or to realize that nature is really everywhere. And in many ways, I feel like the different principles in Hinduism are really to reconnect us with natural energies that are within our own minds and within our own bodies. So my main message would be to like really go ahead and reconnect with nature, and realize the nature of your body. Be curious about the nature of your own mind, and explore different practices that will lead you more and more into this actual study of nature. Really, I think that's what I would suggest.
Cool. Tiffany?
Yeah, so when you asked about those of Hindu origin trying to practice Sanatana Dharma here in the West, the first thing that came to my mind is to say to them to share their practices, to share their wisdom, to share their experiences, rather than keeping them to themselves and being afraid to really connect, or being afraid to look different, to share them, because this is such a rich tradition, such a rich and beautiful tradition, and it has so much to offer to those of us in the West who really have no spiritual background or no spiritual depth. So I would say, if you're of Hindu origin in this country or in the West, and you want to continue to practice your Sanatana Dharma, please share it with others, share it with everyone, because we all need it.
Absolutely. Adriana, any closing remarks and any advice?
I would take it in a different way, and I would say like in steps. Like the first step that I see is that you need to forget that you wanted to be a good Hinduism. You need to forget about the idea. Then you have to remember, like from your childhood, from in a deep connection with yourself, what are the moments, the habits, that brings the light of your heart out. That specific things that help, that you feel the light in your heart, and then experience the world through that light. Like expose yourself as much as possible to prove the light, to share, as Tiffany was saying, exactly, to share that, but not because of with intention of sharing. It's actually just with intention of you experiencing the world, using and experiencing that light within yourself. And then if you become a good Hinduism or any other, is perfect. You're a good human being, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you very much for that. Keshav, any last remarks?
Sure. And yeah, I think just having that wish, that sankalpa alone, and there's you end up kind of being led or gravitating towards what you need to be. There's some phenomenal resources here in the United States. If someone's in the Vedanta path, you have the organization that I'm affiliated with, Arsha Vidya. You also have Chinmaya Mission. You have Ramakrishna Mission. In the Vaishnava path, you have ISKCON and others as well that are there. For Shaivism, you have the Shaiva Siddhanta organization based out of Kauai. There's a lot that is here. And I think that just keeping that sankalpa present will kind of help lead you to where one's community is, if that's what one's seeking. If the community itself is if it's more of a private sadhana practice that is being emphasized, then by all means that too is worth pursuing.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So that concludes the panels for those who chose. I'd like to thank all the panelists for taking the time out of their day to answer some of the questions, and really appreciate everyone for coming out for all of the questions that I asked. And thank you to the audience for showing up as well. Isha, Vishwajit, do you have any other last second remarks?
Yeah. So thank you, RamBhakt ji, Tiffany ji, Adriana ji, and Keshav ji for sharing your knowledge and experience. Also, thank you, Shivain, for being a moderator for this webinar. We hope you all enjoyed learning about the culture and traditions of those who chose. For details about any future discussions, please be sure to follow our Northeast Hindu Yuva pages on Instagram and Facebook, and to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can also watch all of our previous and future webinars. Thank you all for joining. Dhanyavad and namaste.